do it again. You do it.
Okay. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Best Motion Picture 2010. Today we'll be talking about Academy Award nominated film Toy Story 3 and a really, really questionably bad film, The Last Airbender.
What do you want to start with?
I figured the bad one again.
All right.
The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
Written, directed, and produced by M. Night Shyamalan.
Arguably the worst movie that I have ever seen.
Did you watch the animated series Avatar: The Last Airbender?
I wager I've seen somewhere between 25% to 33% of all of the show.
Okay. But you maybe saw like all of season 1?
I think season 1 and season I've seen the least amount of.
Oh, okay. This movie was supposed to like equate to book 1 Water.
Mm-hmm.
There was gonna be like, I guess 3, because that's how many seasons there were of the show. You were confused, rightfully so. I gave Story a, well, I guess I gave it a 3, I gave it a fair. I felt like I could follow, but maybe it's a 2.
I gave it a 2. 2, I believe, was unnoticed. Yeah. I couldn't begin to follow the story.
I was filling in the pieces and the chunks that were missing, although I was fairly upset at how much was either changed or tweaked, or I was like, that didn't happen in the show.
What I did learn, the studios pushed for this to be released in 3D, and so 30 minutes of the story was cut. Not only was there so much telling, so much of the dialogue was just
a lot of telling.
But then on top of that, there really are just pieces completely changed and missing.
Commander Zhao goes, he keeps talking about the library, and that's where he got the scroll. But like, that was a whole iconic episode of the series. I was a little, I don't know, disappointed.
The initial cut and story and script was 7 hours. And the studio told M. Night Shyamalan no. And he said, "Are you sure?" And they said, "Yes."
That's a bold man. Gotta give him props. Like, he has guts. I could bring up a lot of the inconsistencies between the source material and this movie. I don't know if I really should. For instance, when Aang, or Ong as they call him, he's captured by Zuko, and Iroh thinks that he might be the Avatar, and they give him like a rock, a dish of water, and like a candle. That doesn't happen. Some choices were made. The bending in particular is seen with like earthbenders. They do a whole combination of like martial arts moves, and then a rock like slowly floats.
The choreography was so boring. Christ on the cross, get on with it.
Especially like Aang, he did the moves really well, but it was so much like work for such a little payoff of the bending. In terms of other effects, it was a lot of CGI, like a lot of the movie was CGI, and I feel like this was one of the first movies where we saw like a lot of CGI.
Right, it was like a new era of film, I'd like to argue, because James Cameron's Avatar the year before.
Right.
Noah Ringer, he was a black belt, and
okay,
he
makes sense.
His like friends encouraged him. They're like, "You look like Aang. You should audition to be in that movie." And he's like, "Maybe I should." And he did, and they loved it. And he had to take acting classes before this. Initially watching this movie, I was like, "That's one of the worst actors I've ever seen." Like Phantom Menace style, he was so bad. But now I know he was just a little boy that really loved karate, and he never acted in a movie ever again. So I feel really bad for Noah Ringer.
I did not have the same reaction to his acting. It's really hard to bring an animated character to life. I'll say that. And especially one with as much energy as Aang.
He most certainly was not the worst actor in this movie.
Correct.
Jackson Rathbone won Worst Supporting Actor at the Razzies. Duly nominated for this,
Jasper
and yes, for Eclipse and for this film. Jackson Rathbone has said, well, art is subjective. Regarding people saying, what do you think about your performance in The Last Airbender? He said, art is subjective. Can you believe?
The confidence of a white man. Like, wow.
The confidence of a white man playing a native person.
I thought the man who played Iroh was all right, but he was not the best Iroh. But I think he did really well with bringing that connectedness to your chi thing that he was trying to teach Zuko. Ozai. I was like, he's a good actor, but he's not a good Ozai, like at all. He didn't have the true evil.
I like the set and the staging for the Northern Water Tribe when they show up. I thought that was cute.
The music, the score, I wish wasn't so American sounding to me. It had a few like broadly Asian instrument sounds.
Why was Appa hideous?
Why did they make Appa so ugly?
Why was he so hideous?
Why did they make Appa so ugly? I don't get it.
The feet. So awful.
I truly don't understand how you could go wrong, but you did.
I gave it a 1.
I gave it. Why was I so generous?
Maybe you're in a great mood.
I gave it a 3, and I think I was also thinking about the costuming. I don't freaking know what else. I'm gonna bump that down to a 2 because I'm not feeling as generous now. Dev Patel is Zuko.
Yes, he is.
You're just not a great Zuko.
When people ask about this movie, he says like he doesn't recognize himself in this movie, and furthermore, he like looks back and feels bad about like lying to reporters and lying to the press to say how excited he was about the movie.
Oh, I'm glad he at least doesn't feel himself in it, because I feel like he looks lost the whole movie.
One day my father will take me back and you will bow before me.
The scar should have been horrific. There are artists, makeup artists, that could have cranked it out.
Yeah.
And instead they gave him like a couple of scarry brush burn looks.
Yeah, it looks like he got by a tiger. Right. Would you like to start?
Sure. I gave it a 1. I remember being like, what the fuck is this in 2010? It was nominated for a ton of Razzies.
It won Worst Picture of the Year.
And part of that stems from the controversy we'll be talking about when we get to the marginalized people's representation, but god awful back then.
I love knowing that, like, this isn't just something that's aged poorly. This is something that is bad. This was the worst motion picture of the year then, and dare I say, I'd like to nominate it again. Just before this film released, he said, "This is my greatest film yet." And that man made The Sixth Sense. Reporters from the AV Club, when reviewing the film, said, "There should be a class action lawsuit against this film. That is how bad it is." Essentially, that this movie is strictly for kids who like their good guys to be good, their evil guys to be evil, and everything to be very simple. If you frame it that way, sure, but if you give a shit about Avatar: The Last Airbender, I think that there needs to be a class action lawsuit. I gave it a 2. For this category, I gave it a 1.
Yeah, it's still a 1.
It's a 1, and it's because Netflix is trying to reboot it, which is the only reason that people are like, remember that piece of shit that came out in 2010?
Last year, during 2020, at some point, Netflix announced that it was making a live action series, and they were on board, but have since left the project for, I'm gonna guess, similar reasons. Yeah. There's not memes online from this movie. Like, it's not even a meme-y, culty movie.
No, it is a disrespected film.
Yeah.
Before it came out, and Shyamalan was like, "This is my greatest movie." And in 2019, he denounced this. He was like, "I don't know what was going on, but I was under so much pressure to make a big movie like that, and I don't like what I've done. I renounce what I've done with The Last Airbender."
Marginalized people's representations, ethnic minorities, and the LGBTQIA+ community. I feel like, hold on, gays first, because there's no gays, so like...
I have some items to bring to the table about the representation of our people in this film. At one point, Uncle Iroh says, "It is in the heart that all wars are won," and that shit is gay. That is a gay-ass line. 2, when they are in the Northern Water Tribe and Zuko and Aang are fighting, Zuko shoves his face into Aang's crotch.
I don't recall.
I clocked it immediately. It's right after someone from the Northern Water Tribe, when they're about to go to war, goes, "Woo!" And finally, and this was a wonderful piece to learn when I researched it, in the United Kingdom, the word bender means like homo. So whenever people are yelling like, "Look out, he's a bender," audiences like laughed out loud in the theater. And that is the gay shit about The Last Airbender. Shall we move on to the racism?
Let's. All right. In the show, though, the northern and southern water tribes are still based off of like Inuit people, First Nations people. Yeah, I have no fucking clue why they cast Katara and Sokka to be white people along with their grandma and then everyone in the north. Because in the show, it is not like that at all. This movie should not have cast white people in those roles. Like, I do not understand that choice.
I did read when M. Night Shyamalan became attached to this movie, he was like, it has to be her. M. Night Shyamalan, why you do what you did? This still is a diverse cast, but like, it was diverse to be based with anyway.
Correct. Yeah, the show, it was like the Fire Nation was kind of Imperial Japanese based. Earth Kingdom was like China inspired. The Water Tribe was First Nations people. And then the Air Nomads were, you can't deny the kind of Buddhist influence. I know Buddhism isn't a race. That kind of influence of that religion and philosophy. Yes. But the whole show was like, there were no white people in the show. Like, you can't tell me Aang was white in the show.
You can't tell me Aang was white.
You can't tell me Aang was white.
You can't.
It was definitely the same reason studios give today with like, oh, we can't put John Boyega big on the poster in China. It was fully just racist to recast and whitewash.
I have a sneaking suspicion this is going to be a theme for us in this series. I am scared.
Anyways, I know, so I said Aang's like master was black, or he was at least a dark-skinned South Asian man, not sure. Definitely not a white person. The only other black people in the movie were the one like orange themed colored earthbenders. I went, hey, black people.
Honest to God, if we had not taken notes on it, I would not have remembered a single moment of this movie. That's how quickly I would have wiped it away and blocked it. Shove that down and don't think about it ever again.
I don't know if the casting choices were that great for most of those roles. Like I said, they were not good interpretations of those characters. Not that they're bad actors. Well, one thing that was, you know, with all the actual racial diversity that there was, no one was forced to do phony, thick accents. So I did give a 2/3 for the representation because there were people of color in this film and they had speaking roles and it wasn't a story centered around being that race or ethnicity. Whitewashed to hell was still kind of racist.
I gave it a 2 because there was no gay to shoehorn into Avatar. It just didn't sit right with me, the changes. And you know, that's not really my choice to make as a white lady, as what sits right with me or not. But I feel like there wasn't any reason.
When the source material,
it wasn't horrific.
When the source material's right there.
Look at the material.
Manson Family Disclosure.
So I did write something about this.
Okay.
And if I did not know anything about the show, I would think this were a weird, dramatic movie and wonder about the sequels. Basically, the only thing I knew about that was going to happen was he was going to go back to the Air Nomads and see they were all dead. Sad.
The girl worth fighting for moment. Lala.
I didn't know that she doesn't literally turn into the moon, but I knew like Yue was going to turn into the moon. And that like Aang does in fact master waterbender. Like obviously. I was watching this movie with a friend, and at one point I really had to pause. I was like, they are telling a lot. And ask him a question. He was like, this is like basically 10 episodes that they're just telling you away right now.
I put like yes, because I thought the same thing. If I hadn't watched the show, no context showing this movie to someone, they might think this is honestly like an epic. It's poorly done.
Yeah, she died.
And there's a lot of context. Yeah, they just try and tell you. If you had no idea this was a show, it might change for you, but you're still going to think it's a bad movie even if you knew, almost especially if you watched the show and knew about the show. So.
Yeah.
Those are our thoughts on
The Last Airbender.
Now let's talk about Toy Story 3. I feel like, are we not going to address what we look like? Oh!
Perfect.
Yeah, this movie is a polar opposite of what we just discussed
Right.
in almost every category.
We picked them because they were both children's movies that
Right.
released that year, and like, I couldn't agree more.
Pixar has a reputation, but this one was nominated for Best Picture along with like Best Animated Picture, which doesn't always happen.
I could be wrong, but I think it may have been the first one.
Yeah.
Granted, this is when they had just freshly switched to there being 10 nominees. Screw the Academy. Your opinions are arbitrary, and that's why we're doing this anyway. This movie is the frame story of you never know the last time you're gonna play with your child, and then in between, it is a jailbreak movie. The fact that those two stories are intertwined, it's masterful.
The story, I gave a 5. Just
But
get
I
that
also
out
gave
of the
it a
way.
5, yeah.
I was taught in film school, like, simple story, complex characters. But since we knew the characters, yeah, not that it was complex, but it wasn't just A to B. Like, there was so many conflicts and honestly twists and turns that for a children's movie, it could be a little intense. And then, yeah, you don't know the last time you're gonna, like, you said play with your child, but yes. I was like, pick up a toy. One day, you put your toys down and never touch them again. One day, your parents will pick you up and set you down and never pick you up again.
Seeing this came out when we were freshmen in high school.
Yes.
And remember thinking, the sad thing of like, I should go get my stuffed animal this, blah, blah, blah. Like, you feel that pain. And watching it now, Barbie's crying because Molly doesn't want to play with her anymore. That's different. It's her child doesn't want to play with her anymore.
Yeah, Molly just was like, what's closest to me? Barbie can go.
Yeah. How did these movies change over time? The whole point of the series? This movie hit me in such a different way, in a way that I didn't know it could change. This is a timeless story that hits different every time.
The conflicts, I basically wrote down the whole, like, that's not trash. I was like, the climax of the movie, them going down a pile of garbage to an incinerator, and they just hold hands because they're like, at least I'm with my best friends. That's almost haunting.
Yeah, we watched that together. Did I stop crying for one moment of this movie?
I was like, she literally cried the entire movie.
Jessie spoke and the tears started.
True. The story, it's
perfect. It's a 5. There is one thing about this story that I realized. Why is Slinky a person, but Bullseye's a horse?
I always thought, I don't want to say an accessory.
Yeah.
But Slinky is his own dog. He's his own.
Yeah.
Toy.
Woody, I got this.
Yeah, the art of it. I gave it a 4. I gave it a good. Mm-hmm. Obviously, again, Pixar has a reputation. They do really great animation. I was like, it's good, but it's not excellent. I don't know if it was maybe because it is like Pixar, it's the 3D animation, it wasn't blowing our minds. It wasn't anything that new or fresh, even though the technology is constantly improving.
Right. The score is so similar. They have they have the same tools to work with and make it in a new way. One of the things I read about that was like new to the table that they had to work on was for so long they had to work on fur.
Yeah,
so
and hair.
Fur movement was really big, and then one of the hardest things they found in this movie was the reflection of the trash bags.
Oh, of the trash bag.
That was really hard to animate. Ken and Barbie's outfits, they're not based on real Barbie outfits. Like, the Barbie that she is still based on, I believe, 80s workout Barbie, but it's not actually Dead Ringer's same outfit, the same way that, like, oh, that telephone is that iconic telephone. It's not.
It's just slightly different.
Yeah. Dolly, voiced by Bonnie Hunt, the fact that she's a felt doll, the way she moved, freaked me out.
It was good.
It was good. 4.
Good. It was very popular. A sequel that it was 12 years?
It might have been 11.
But still, it was like almost one of the first, not reboots. Let's revisit these characters from your childhood, from the 90s. I feel like it was a key thing was that Andy had grown up just like we had grown up. It hit the parents and the kids right in the feels, but it was still engaging with the tots that were seeing it as well.
They wanted to call the voice actor that played Andy to see if he could still like voice it, and he didn't answer the first time, so they got the voicemail and they were like overjoyed. They're like, it's perfect. This was the first Disney film ever to gross $1 billion. This was everywhere. The summer of 2010. The blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone of every age was seeing it.
Right. Everyone was seeing Toy Story. I mean, I gave it a 4 or a 5. I feel like I'm gonna stick with the 5 in that it was like everywhere. Disney store was stocked up on the dolls again.
I also gave it a 5.
You know, like, yeah, we connected with Andy back then that we're growing up. And yeah, almost now we're like the toys.
Yeah, we're the toys.
We're the toys.
You played with me. When Rex at the beat, we're the toys. We're the toys. I give it a 3. I'm giving it a 5.
Okay. I said like fair because no one is specifically still talking about this one. Obviously Disney Plus released about a year ago, so it's available to watch. People are watching it because now there's 4. They're going to be played, they're going to be suggested because they're one of the top Pixar franchises. I thought Toy Story 3 was a cash grab back in 2010, but then I saw it and I was like, no, it's actually like, it might be a cash grab, but it's fucking heartwarming.
Yeah.
Toy Story 4, I was like, I'm not talking to people about how great Toy Story 3 is anymore.
Very
except
fair.
with you.
I agree with you, and I think that what am I trying to say? Okay, so Toy Story 4 releasing brought this to the forefront again, similar to reboot of Last Airbender and bringing it to the forefront again. Blah blah. I think one thing we're missing that like maybe we don't have children,
Right?
And I don't have any children in my family anymore. When people go back and like rewatch things and stream things, like Toy Story is something their kid can just really get into.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to be ever relevant because it is a kids movie that's well received and parents can also watch. For minimum, it's evergreen. In January of 2020, 2 brothers remade this movie using stop motion animation in real life. And it's called Toy Story 3 IRL. The director of this movie in June of 2020, Barbie's quote, "Authority should derive from the consent of the governed, not from the threat of force, in order to support Black Lives Matter movement after the death of George Floyd." The fact that he immediately was like, this is from my movie and I'm bringing it up, blah, blah, and it's also like, Barbie says, Black Lives Matter. This movie is evergreen.
So I didn't do like research.
That's okay. I feel like I have to be able to assess it. You know?
Like, yeah, analyze.
Yeah.
That makes sense, but I'm just like, I'm going with what's in my noggin.
Gotcha.
I don't know how to broach the subject. It's an animated movie.
And it's an animated movie with characters we already had. Maybe with the new characters they had, they can be voiced by people of
color.
Yes.
And another thing, I don't want to say we're neglecting, especially with animation, all the artists and designers. We can watch the credits and try and go through everyone on the IMDb. I don't know how diverse the crew was, which is just as important. Yes, voice actors are doing work too, but like, that's who's doing the work.
Right.
These characters were originally created in the 90s. Clearly a different world. They're not going to recast Woody and Buzz.
They're not changing Tom Hanks.
If there are any more sequels, there's probably room for improvement.
This movie does give, I think, exactly 3 lines to Whoopi Goldberg. Some fans mistook Stretch, Whoopi Goldberg, as a male because of her design, but since Whoopi Goldberg voices her, she's obviously a female.
Like, obviously that purple sticky octopus
is a woman.
Is gendered.
Yes! Thank you. I was gonna say, why does it matter?
Okay.
In Toy Story 4, they hint that Bonnie's dad is of Latin descent, and Bonnie is meant to be racially ambiguous, which is fine. She's one of the, 4 human faces in the movie. But Whoopi Goldberg was the only non-white person voicing anyone in the movie.
So there is definitely room for improvement.
I was gonna give it a 3 for marginalized persons.
I was gonna give it a 2 just because if we're kind of going on who we would be looking at, if it's only Whoopi Goldberg who's not white.
She's in it 'cause they're like, Whoopi, are you in the area today? They could have had anyone. They could have had Wanda Sykes be Trixie instead of Kristen Shaw, they could have changed a lot of things.
Right.
Regarding the gay community, the existence of Ken and Barbie kind of is a lot to work with.
The other toys keep telling Ken he's a girl's toy. And he's like, I'm not a girl's toy. And just the fashion, he puts on a fashion show, very...
I would also like to add that Mr. Pricklepants and his Shakespeareanness,
Ooh.
that MF gay, I felt
Yeah.
represented.
Yeah.
I felt represented in Toy Story 3.
Potentially, like, if you were a child watching Ken putting on a fashion show with a disco ball and sparkly outfits and everything else, like, he just wants to be groovy and cool. If you were a little queer boy, you might be like, I like everything about that character and I want to be him. Because I like everything about that character and I want to be him.
Same.
Manson Family Disclosure. I said no. Even if you were unfamiliar with the other movies in the franchise, you would not be lost as to what is going on, who is who, and yes, any additional character information, of course, adds to the enrichment of the story, but you don't lose any context or comprehension because you didn't watch the last two movies right before this. So those are our thoughts on Toy Story 3 and The Last Airbender. Definitely tell us what yours are if you've watched these movies during quarantine, with your kids, without them, at Silly Sickos on all social media.
We'll see you in the next episode of this series where we'll take it down a new lane.
Bye!
Like and subscribe.
Are you telling me Buzz Lightyear has a dick?